Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Wake Up Missoula. I'm your host, Scott Ramp, ushering you into the day. I got Dubbin Stuff, I got Pre-Critic, I'm judging movies whether they need it or not. We got a little tidbit from the Last Best Constitution, just some more information about this and that. One of the bigger news things that are happening in and around the city of Missoula is Missoula's decided Monday to update the park ordinance to ban overnight use of the city-county parks. This not only affects homeless population, which is indirectly what they were targeting, but at the same time to prevent anyone from being there from 11 p.m. to about 5 a.m. for any kind of overnight long stays. The emergency ordinance extends the provision of public safety and health within the city reaction to the growing urban camping issue that has gotten out of control since the closure of the Johnson Street winter warming shelter. The city council meeting lasted 6 hours with plenty of folks on all sides arguing the dignity of homeless folks who have been pushed around and residents who are wanting to use the parks and trails have found all sorts of needles, beers, cans, and human feces littered around. City park crews have removed encampments every day, only for the next day for the camps to be rebuilt. Danny Carlino, city council member, wrote an op-ed that reflected the ineptitude of the city with coming up with solutions. Rather than criminalizing homelessness, Mayor Jordan Hess expressed sympathy and aggravation at the lack of services in our community can provide without monetary backing to solve many of the issues, saying that the state has essentially abandoned us while federal aid is not really relegated towards the specifics of homelessness. I will have more on this during my city council report with back and forth comments moving forward. Here's another story. Imagine being shook by a series of fighter jets flying over our nation's capital. On Sunday, the New York-bound plane erratic flight path inexplicably turned around over Long Island to fly directly over Washington, D.C., prompting the military to scramble fighter jets. This in turn caused a sonic boom heard over Washington, Maryland, and Virginia. The plane ended up crashing in Virginia, southwest of Charlottesville, and police have issued warnings of debris in the area. Investigators confirmed the pilot was seen slumped over and unresponsive. The plane crash going 20,000 feet per minute resulted in the pilot's death and the passengers. At this time, you can imagine the unresponsive plane flying over the Capitol gave much concern, and White House, after the fact, sent condolences to the pilot's passenger's family, one included a 2-year-old granddaughter of the owner of the plane. Speaking of New York, smoke from the Canadian wilderness wildfires has spread as far as Syracuse, New York, and much of the Midwest bordering Canada. The worst days was during the midweek, but a big chunk of it started to dissipate, but there's still a lot of lingering smoke in the area as well. So we're going to refer to this picture right here, and this was the picture from Wednesday. The Quebec area fires have been relatively close, about 500 to 600 miles from Rhode Island, and they follow wildfires in Nova Scotia. Canadian officials say this is shaping up to be the nation's worst wildfire season ever. It started earlier on, and so for Friday, so some more smoke generally in the area as well. It wasn't as hazardous as it was on Wednesday, but it still definitely stuck around and started to be to linger some more. Exhausting fighting resources across the county. Fire and environmental officials say that this is a drier than usual ground and accelerated very quickly. And of course, Missoula did have a taste of this smoke earlier this past month, and we're also dealing with a lot of precipitation and storms happening here as well. This might be something Montana, Missoula will face going into our fire season. And of course, I say fire season like that because the concept of fire season never really existed 15 plus years ago when it was wildfires and it was like a huge breaking thing when it gripped us. Now it's so common when there's a wildfire in California, a lot of times we just kind of like, oh yeah, there's a wildfire in California. So it's kind of interesting. So moving on, the Sleepy Inn has been taken care of, and the numbers are out, and the city will use tax increment financing with some brownfield federal dollars, a sum total of $318,000 minus the $83,000 of the brownfields money. The property bought and run through emergency COVID money and through FEMA will in turn make the city $890,000 as the listing price. This money would turn and go around towards the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which is one of the few sources of revenues that the city have built in to help generate money for affordable housing causes. From my city council report, there are 4 types of grants that the city used have for affordable housing. Out of the four, three of them are federal, and only one of them is the affordable housing tax, is the affordable housing trust. It's one of the tools that the city is using with property tax dollars that were invested in various projects that were turned around to create a profit pool for the city for affordable housing trust. It's an interesting way because when it comes down to it, the city started using TIF money, taxing financing, to help developers encourage them to build here, and the whole ends justify the means thing was the essential idea that they would create future taxes and we could create a better future tax base that would help encourage better alleviation on our property taxes moving forward. So it is an interesting move for the city, as you know, of generating tax revenue. And more Missoula news, interim police chief Mike Collier will take up the top job as chief of police coming next Monday. The native-born Missoulian will continue his service. He started in March, appointed Monday during the city council's vote. Unlike the sheriff's department, the hire requires a majority vote from the elected city rather than general election. He was on the ground floor working with the Department of Justice to improve sexual assault response in the 2011's big story involving UM Grizzly Athletics via Bo Donaldson, who was convicted of sexual assault, and Jordan Johnson, who was found not guilty. But the impacts of those high-profile cases made Missoula update their policies when it comes to the sexual assault survivors. He has 27 years of experience from Missoula since 1996. He did have a stint in Idaho after he graduated. The flagship program is leaving, so I'm going to segue into the next one. And so Mike Collier will be sworn in Monday, June 12th during the regular city council meeting. All right, so we're talking about the flagship program. So Western Montana Mental Health, that has funded it for so long, is now leaving. And so the flagship program is losing funding and it will cease to operate after the summer. A lot of some of their summer programs are being picked up for some of the slack. According to the Montana Free Press, Western Montana Mental Health Center notified the Missoula Public School System last month that the organization would no longer be running the program after the end of the current school year. According to interim executive Administrator Colleen Rudio, the once prolific behavioral health organization has closed or scaled down several programs in recent years and had county contracts pulled. An outcome Western was partially attributed by low in reimbursement from the state for services to Medicaid patients. Western's boards of directors in May decided not to renew the contract with former CEO Levy Anderson and is now in search of new leadership. So a lot of the slack that's being pulled up is YMCA has thrown their hat in and said that this is up their wheelhouse, but mentioned that they are building a plane as it flies, so there is still room for error. However, summer obligations, the flagship program hosted, will help relieve these services through the summer before plans in the schools are being hashed out. So this is a large gap for the flagship left behind, and perhaps YMCA, Parks and Rec, or even some of the partners inside the library can expect to throw some of their hats in the ring for programs to supplement after-school programming. Mental health spending in general is lacking, especially in Montana. During one of the public meetings with the mayor, Warm Springs Mental Health Facility has turned away folks who need more help than they can provide and given what's called a yellow backpack and sent on their way, according to Mayor Jordan Hess at one of our city meetings that we Wednesdays with the mayor meetings that we've had recently. There was a shakeup with the staff being put on leave back in March of this year, throwing a wrench in many of their normal operations. Daily Inner Lake published a story on June 4th talking about the broken mental health system in Montana. This is an op-ed by Barbara Headley talking about her adult son who went off his meds and began spiraling. She's been trying to get an intervention on behalf because the only drugs he is taking are illegal and unsafe to the point where he's thought of shooting himself in the head. So she has mentioned that no organizations have stepped up to help with many growing disturbances her son is doing and not doing. She also reflected on her homelessness issue, stating in this op-ed, homelessness is not a homelessness crisis, it is a mental health issue. Somehow the laws need to be changed and we need to be more mental health facilities, mental health professionals, and reliable intervention to get people the medical assistance they need. Many laws are in place to protect individual rights regardless of their mental health, and in many cases of escalating behavior cannot be addressed until the justice system has to kick in, and that usually ends them in jail rather than the facilities that are just not there for them. On the other hand, rehab has become a luxury for those who can afford it, but only works when people addicted choose to go to rehab. Drugs may make you feel good and get you high, but not wanting to feel good and not getting high takes a lot of work for people who feel like getting high makes them feel normal, while not getting that fix somehow harms them. Interventions tend to challenge an individual's dignity that is protected by law. Going to hurt someone or themselves isn't the same as actually doing it, and by then it is always too late. Programs come and go. When I was a kid, there was a certain age summer camp that was free through federal dollars. The camp was called NYSP, which supplemented about 8 weeks out of the summer. Boys and Girls Club Parks and Rec are among one of the few services that provide a sliding scale for summer camps, but sliding scales may only impact those on EBT and SNAP type programs. And those are some of the things as well. There's also another resource that you can use online. It is a commercial resource, but it is 406families.com. They have resources to many different things. One of the reasons why I got on that website in the first place is because they had a guide for food trucks. Food, right? And one of the major things they started promoting is a lot of the summer camps and other supplemental programs, and it was created by moms here in the city of Missoula to help find places and camps for kids to go to during the summer. So those are a good resource for a lot of people to do that as well. That's pretty much it for what's happening in the news today. But of course, one of the biggest news is happening in more recent times is the fact that Trump was indicted for those Mar-a-Lago documents that the FBI raided. And so this kind of broke just this last night, just a lot of stuff happening here as well. First thing, he basically announced it himself through his own social media, Truth Social, saying that he has been indicted. But then there was a follow-up interview with his lawyer with CNN saying that it's like, yeah, he's been basically counted with 7 charges. Not to mention, he was already charged in New York with 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. And so there's definitely a lot going on for that particular instance. One is more of a criminal, and the other one is more of an indictment, which the indictment seems to have been moving forward as well. Officials with the National Archives and Record Administration reached out to representatives for Trump in spring 2021 when they realized the important materials from his time in office was missing from their collection. According to the Presidential Infrastructure Act, White House documents are considered property of the U.S. government and must be preserved. A Trump representative told the National Archives in December 2021 that the president records have been found at Mar-a-Lago. In January 2022, National Archives retrieved 15 boxes of documents from Trump's Florida home, later telling Justice Department officials that they contained a lot of classified materials. So those are just some of the snippets from some of the news articles. A lot of the stuff you already know, but right now the indictment is moving forward, and we'll see how that all works out. So yeah, that's pretty much it for my news report, and just kind of giving the wrap up. Here are some of the short films that the kids made last Saturday, and we're going to be going on until the end of June, when we'll be coming back with our summer camps in July and August. So our Saturday drop-ins will be kind of sunset for the rest of the summer, and then we'll be back sometime during September. So without further ado, here is a taste of this, and when I come back, we're going to talk about some movies. Hey guys, welcome back. Let's talk about some movies that are coming out this weekend. It is time for my childhood. I'm a kid of the '90s, which basically means I'm adult man in my 30s now. So let's try again with yet another Transformers movie, The Rise of the Beasts. So I remember watching Beast Wars when I was a kid, just before I would go to elementary school. Bumblebee took place in the '80s, and there's one. Let's do it in the '90s, like, kind of make it that kind of thing with Pete Davidson leading his voice to a Transformer rather than dating one. Watch Kim's ex become buddies with a young adult who is in way over his head when evil forces invade yet again. But this time they have them animal Transformers, which, it's not the Dinobots, but it's the Beast Wars, which is basically my childhood. '90s babies, get ready for a thriller or two in a series of films that have been the sci-fi action thrillers of Fast and Furious type movies that Michael Bay is just collecting checks at this point. Even more, that he's not even directing this film. He's like the MCU chief of the Transformers universe, but much looser with the script direction. So nothing has changed with this or that, and you can expect to see yet another dumb robot fighting movie. Mending the Line. Do you like fly fishing? But what if it had drama? This movie is more than that, as it looks to make a drama about an old man and his son going fishing and mending their bond over mending the fishing line. Hence, Mending the Line title. This is a very Montana movie about an old vet teach a young vet how to fly fish and get over their times overseas and begin to bond over activities, because being alone with your thoughts can be dangerous for some people, especially in Montana. Watch a series of you didn't live in the same war as me, but you understand about the scars left behind, and some scars you don't see. The old guy from Succession is in this movie, so I guess there's that. And then finally, we got 97 minutes. Ever wanted to be an air traffic controller? Watch this fast-paced movie about air traffic controllers who have to decide whether or not to let a plane be destroyed. This movie will make you go, well, the NSA wants to explode a hijacked plane, and it's a drama about people who have to make the decision to sacrifice the people on the plane for the many on the ground. Kind of seems like a bad timing since the plane crashed in Virginia recently. The movie takes place on the ground, and it's likely to have people watching monitors, and the real movie happening 1,000 feet in the air. So those are the movies that are coming out this weekend. I have a movie for you guys, and it is up next. We have Hangman Never Dies, redubbed from the 1943 film of the same name. So here's this.
Oh, Judy.
Gotcha. You think you can beat me just because you moved your horse?
Well, it's the only way to prevent you from doing the 4-move checkmate on me. Anyways, play again?
Oh no, I like to play once, and if I win, I stop playing forever. Quit when
Excuse me. This is awkward. Do you mind if I read my letter to you guys? I know you like making fun of me for reading letters from my girlfriend, but this chance you guys get to read it for yourself.
Oh, you decided to wise up. Dear Charles, from the bottom of my heart, I am deeply sorry. Oh, maybe you should actually read this instead. This is, personal. Dear Charles, from the bottom of my heart, I am deeply sorry. Stop. I cannot continue this relationship while you're away overseas. Stop. Do not feel like you have to hold yourself out just for me. Stop. Please, just move on with your life. Stop. I've met someone over here. He works at a soda shop. Stop. He is very nice. He has one leg, and that's why he couldn't go to war. And since he's here, I was just like, well, might as well do it. Stop. Yours, Margaret Johnson. P.S. I'm taking all the Beanie Babies. Oh my God. I love those Beanie Babies. Whoa, wait a minute. They don't have the word printed stop on here.
Here, let me take a look at that real quick. And what I can decipher is the fact that he used the word stop to mention every period in this thing. You know, you didn't need to use the word stop to mention every period. You could have just naturally paused. Kind of feels like a waste of words. Yeah, there's a lot of things happen on here. She kind of goes into details about the soda jerk.
All right, so let's talk about some city council reports. It's time to talk about what happened during city council, and a lot of it had to do with the homeless provision of the Parks and Rec ordinance of 12.04. And so that was a big update for that one to basically prevent overnight camping or overnight use of the many Missoula Parks and Rec of the Missoula City and County areas, and just to prevent people from going in there between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. So the Parks and Rec teamed up with legal and the police to talk about the cleaning and preventing encampments in the parks and trails where citizens frequent, and painting encampments as a legal use of park services in accordance with the district court ruling that is allowed for camping if there are no available beds in the shelter or no available open space, which the city of Missoula is able to have a good amount of open space to basically move people once again to another location. So this is kind of like an ongoing loop the city has done. Met a lot of complaints from residents in the city of Missoula dealing with some homeless people just kind of living like basically passing out on their lawn, you know, all sorts of different issues you're going to hear for the most part. But we're going to focus on public comment as they react to the city's plans. Kicking off is Susan Campbell-Renault, who is known by MCAT for her services for Missoula area veterans, and reflects on incidents involving the wreaths that were placed during the Monday memorial service in just towards, I think it was 2 weeks ago, so that she's kind of reflected on that. So here's Susan Campbell-Renault.
The ladies of the American Legion Post 68 spent 4 months making 45 beautiful wreaths. This is one of them. In fact, this one I'm going to be giving to a Gold Star mother that lost a Marine. So we've taken it upon ourselves to show up the day after Memorial Day and pick up the wreaths. On May 31st, 2 of our elderly women from the American Legion came to pick up the wreaths at the Doughboy statue when they were completely surrounded by very drunk, very drugged out homeless people that were encamped at the Doughboy statue where these wreaths had been placed by the VFW and the American Legion the day before. They also were walking away with beautiful planters that had been donated by Benson Farms. The women were terrified. They were being cursed at, they were being screamed at, they were being pulled at. And thankfully there was a police officer that saw what was going on. I have filed a police report. I was over at Western Montana State Veterans Cemetery and received a frantic phone call from one of the women telling me in real time what was going on.
All right, so Susan Campbell-Renault wanted things to be done within the city of Missoula and to see some of the daily occurrences that some citizens of the Missoula have to deal with. Susan said these instances are unacceptable and is frustrated at the city for not doing anything to prevent or deter situations like this from happening. Riley Jacobson works at the POV, reflects on authorized campsite and some of the history of Missoula's lack of better option, and this is what he had to say.
To create more barriers to housing is going to make it more difficult for those who are most vulnerable within our community to get into housing. A large percentage who are from Missoula, who have lived here their entire lives and due to mental health and addiction issues, are now living on the streets. So while I trust in leadership, while I trust in the work that's being done by everyone on the council and everyone in this community, and I feel in my heart that there is a good solution, to start issuing tickets for something is going to create a larger barrier for people to overcome, which is also going to create a rise in our jail population, which is then going to put a further strain on our taxes, which is also going to result in people losing their IDs and then entering houselessness again. So just something to take into consideration. I'm sure everyone is thinking through the issue to the best that they can.
Okay, so that was Riley Jacobson talking a little bit more about the front lines of working at the POV. One of the few regulars from way back when, and you know, he spoke very frequently during the time when they were closing the authorized campsite just by the new Walmart off Mullen. Joe Piscasell spoke very passionately about the homeless population and just about what the city has been doing the last year or so.
Whether I was in person or I was online, I watched week after week professionals who work in care industries, in healthcare, in services, come and talk to you and plead with you every single week, telling you what they needed, telling you that they needed the shelters to stay open, warning you that if you close these shelters, that there was going to be a problem. They had nowhere else to go. And now I'm reading in all the local publications, I'm seeing the statements that are being made by this council, acting as if this was a surprise. You were warned. You knew this was coming. You had the choice to make this less impactful, and you refused to take it. I was in the room when we were doing budgeting into the wee hours of the night. I watched two counselors try and make the argument for a different budget, and I watched everyone behind that desk literally scoff, sneer, and roll their eyes at them. It was so frustrating. And now to sit here and pretend that this could not have been foreseen, that there could not have been any other way. And the most infuriating thing is I watched you laud how good your programs were and how safe people were now. And that has not been the case. People have died in the last few months. Your policy failures have a body count.
All right, so that was Joe talking about that. One of the many things as well is that the city has some real options and real money with the COVID funds to help expand services within the city-county operation with the term, the campaign Operation Shelter, which provided proved to work and adjusted to create authorized campsite last year before closing it for the winter, making folks move towards the emergency winter shelter, and then that closure of that seasonal shelter resulted in this. Cassie Mannion spoke about her experiences working at Secret Seconds, a thrift store that is run and operated through the YWCA next door to the Poverello Center, and this is some of her first case daily scenario of working there.
We are getting less and less people willing to walk into our building because of the campsite that technically is not on our property, but looks like it surrounds our building. And I just want everyone to know what a day in our life at Secret Seconds is like. And it involves shoveling human waste, vomit, beer cans, picking up hypodermic needles. A bunch of us girls leaving the other day had to be told to stay in the building because we had a gun threat right behind our building. I'm just shocked at what it has turned into, and I know a lot of the girls are worried for their safety. We had one not come to work the other day because she was worried after that. 2 stabbings right next door, a gun threat, and we just did not sign up for that.
All right, so that was Cassie Mannion talking about her experiences with homeless next door to where she works. She's compassionate towards the plight of her fellow man, and the constant issues are ongoing and recurring. One of the campers, Clayton, talks about his experience and hopes to be an example of good and clean camping, even if he is camping in the urban area.
It's the first month and a half of this decision, and there are going to be mistakes. Camps are going to flop. Big mistakes are going to be made. Citations will probably be issued, but we can't expect anybody to hit the ground running on a new decision and make it perfect. I think intentional camps would be helpful. Right out in the open, on pathways where they're kept clean and people can use them. Trash camps, food camps, medical camps that would keep infrastructure in our own hands until we couldn't deal with it. And make it so that the impact on the city is less. And if those camps could toe the line and be clean and do what they say they're trying to do, it's a example that other people can see the benefit of and maybe learn to live by.
All right, so that was Clayton talking more about how the authorized campsite that was offered through the city worked, and but at the same time, one of the biggest issues that a lot of the citizens had there was a half and half issue, because the citizens who didn't live near a lot of these campsites complained about the security and the overuse of potential force, but then the people who actually lived in the area, they're pretty much in favor of this. The fact that there was less calls to the police department and a lot of that going on there as well. So we're going to skip ahead to discussion of the updated ordinance, since many comments reflected the frustrations of people being forced to move and the people who have to deal with them on regular basis. Daniel Carlino from City Council talks about the budget and how it reflects the city's priorities.
It's just interesting because when we looked at the budget, it's so big that none of us truly even knew what was in the budget, yet you all voted for it. And it's just, how do you know that we don't have money for shelters if you don't even know what's truly in the budget until we get these claims each week? So I just find that very strange.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm having an issue. Weird. I'm definitely having some issues right here. So I'm just going to quickly close this out and reopen it. And, as I'm talking a little bit more about this, it's just, there's definitely a lot of back and forth talking, within the city of Missoula. And, there's just a lot of concerns from the citizens, not to mention the people who are homeless, dealing with that fact. And many of the positions of the city are very much like the winter warming shelter was a lot of outcry from citizens of Missoula's for a good amount of years, being like, hey, you spend, the hospital has to spend X amount of time and services to help people who are potentially dying of hypothermia during the wintertime. If we allocate some of those funds, maybe doing this and that. So one of the few organizations that stepped up was the Salvation Army, and so the Salvation Army did their thing. The Palvarella started to be, try to catch up with some of their services, and then they basically, in turn, created that stop. So I guess I'm going to have to do some live editing because for some reason all my audio seems to be disappeared. So I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to go try to sync it back up with Daniel Carlino. Yeah, it's the same thing. I wonder what happened.
Response.
Yeah, it's so weird. So let's just take a listen.
Interesting because when we looked at the budget, it's so big that none of us truly even knew what was in the budget, yet you all voted for it. And it's just, how do you know that we don't have money for shelters if you don't even know what's truly in the budget until we get these claims each week? So I just find that very strange.
Okay, so we lost the comment. Yeah, I don't know what happened. I'm just definitely having some major technical difficulties.
I'm out today to speak on non-agenda items. And it would be really nice if city council members were able to comment in response to people that come to public comment, but I see that.
Mr. Carlino, we're on the consent agenda. Do you have anything specific to the consent agenda items?
Oh, this is. It's all related to the claims and trying to create more public transparency, but that's all I really wanted to say is that how do you know that we don't have money for shelters when you didn't even know what was in the budget by the time you voted for it?
Okay, so that's what Daniel Colino had to say about some of the budgeting issues. And then Jordan Hess talks about this ordinance and a little bit more as well as we move forward.
It's an issue that we see. This is an issue that we wish to work on with compassion. This is an issue that we wish to make substantial headway on. And we will. And we're here tonight to talk about an ordinance change, but we, through our urban camping policy advisory team, are working on a number of issues to not only improve our response to encampments that present a health and safety risk, which is truly what we're talking about here tonight. We're not talking about people simply living unsheltered in the right-of-way. We're talking about people that present health and safety risks. So not only are we talking about that in our, or behaviors rather, that present health and safety risks, not only are we talking about that in our urban camping advisory team, we're also talking about the long-term solutions that we all know we need in order to address houselessness in our community. And that is housing and that is sheltering. And we will continue to work diligently on housing. We will continue to work diligently on sheltering. And that is something that we will continue to talk about over the coming months. And I can say one thing for certain, it is not fully developed yet, but expanded sheltering will absolutely be in my executive budget for fiscal year 2024. That is certain to be in there, and it's just something that we're working through the details on, and that we are working very quickly to figure out.
All right, so that was Jordan Hess's response to creating a budget that would overtly potentially help the situation in the future. So let's see. Essentially, this was for Missoula residents who have been scared of some of the folks in the area of Missoula and not criminalize homelessness, but give the city some real tools to navigate parks and trails. Donna Glockler, with Director of Parks and Rec, talks about the ordinance and their expectations on this as well.
So the behaviors within 1240 are really about providing a level of decorum and expectation for all residents of every type, of every kind, those currently sheltered or unsheltered, so that we can have a reasonable expectation for a safe visit to our parks.
Okay, so yeah, I thought I had a longer quote than that, but I guess that's what I had for that one. Summer is the time for many camps and with Parks and Rec using these parks to facilitate summer camps and activities. Priority for creating a structured use for parks and trails for residents trying to create safe spaces. These spaces, according to Gockler, are being disrespected and shouldn't have to keep bringing in crews to make these areas clean and safe from various trash left behind. Mike Collier, interim chief of police, talks about the enforcement of using some of this ordinance as well.
Our traditional response on any of this stuff is just to get compliance. It's all we want out of this ordinance, and it's all we would want in our normal enforcement activities. And so that leads to the next question about, I think of some time that somebody's been cited for this. I can't. I mean, it's been a long time since I was close to that type of work. I would imagine that we've responded to those things and asked people to move along, and they've done just that.
Yep, so they just want to be able to create a tool that says, well, you know, in this park ordinance that basically says city covenants, blah, 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 and just have some legalese to give them some ways to basically make people move along. Not necessarily criminalizing overnight camping, but just basically saying, like, hey, this is a city park, people use this park. You know, there's going to be kids screaming and playing these parks, so it's like if you can move somewhere else, it'll be a lot quieter. So that's a positive way of kind of moving people other way, but at the same time, it's like you're still forcing people to move from one place to another because, you know, the whole time they've basically been moved from the authorized campsites, then they got moved from the emergency winter shelter, and now they're just like, oh, where do we go? It's like, I don't know. So when that happens, this is the kind of thing that happens when you don't have a plan moving forward. And so Travis Matier, you know, he's spoken about this as well, but he did mention that as long as it is temporary, since this is going to be a 90-day ban for the summer, and this is what Travis Matier had to say about that.
We have a crisis. We have so many interventions that need to be happening. It's not just housing. It's not just shelter beds. And it's not just safety in parks. It's safety in the shelters. So when a pregnant woman can be assaulted in a porta potty at the Johnson Street shelter, I don't know how safe people are going to feel in those actual shelters if that kind of violence is happening within the shelters. We are talking about serious things in parks. I thank Parks and Rec staff for cleaning up Russell Street. I thank law enforcement. I thank the EMTs. I thank the fire folks for responding to a non-compliant offender in the middle of the river twice in 2 days. So we really, really need all levels of intervention. We need honesty and accountability about what's not working. I'm glad to hear that we are addressing that there's actual human trafficking happening within the authorized camping site before it was closed down. That's good. I'm researching and investigating that kind of stuff as well. So I really hope we look at proper interventions and proper housing models for all the people that need various emergency interventions. Otherwise, we're going to be setting up this community for serious disappointment in 90 days when solutions haven't really been thought of long term. Thank you.
All right, so that was Travis Matier talking about that, because it's not just about this one thing. It's an overarching thing that seems to be a huge issue as well. And Andy Housel reflects on this ordinance and just kind of talks about raising a 9-year-old kid.
In a shelter, in a house, who cannot get adequate food and health care, that's the conversation I don't want to be having with my child. Is why do we live in a society where that is something you're seeing all the time, where every time you go to the park, you're seeing somebody who doesn't have a house, who doesn't have enough food, who doesn't have health care, who doesn't have addiction treatment, who doesn't have mental health treatment. That's the conversation we should be scared to have with our kids, not the one about the needle or the bad behavior they witnessed. Because that bad behavior is the symptom of all this other stuff that is not happening? I'm so tired of people telling me what my kid can't see. My kid has seen so much stuff, and my kid has so more compassion in her one stinking finger than I see in this room half the time. It's absolutely maddening. I didn't anticipate losing my cool. Okay, I apologize. Actually, I don't apologize. I don't apologize because I am this upset. All of us should be this upset that this is the world that we live in.
All right, so that was Andy Housel giving some remarks on that as well. Gwen Jones, later on in the meeting, talked about reflects on higher government and its failures to address local housing crisis in smaller communities, and this is what her response was.
To me, it is a federal and state problem. I'm not seeing any help from the state, frankly, coming in. Federal government, I know, is focusing on much, much bigger urban areas right now, so at least they are starting to get their arms around it to a degree, but I don't know that help will come. So in the meantime, we're going to have to work on it on a local level. And to me, the big picture is figuring out, as we have many affordable housing projects that we're working on and that are coming online, it's never going to solve this. And we have people with different needs at different levels. And what we need to focus on, I think, is having a bigger conversation about having a second significant shelter in Missoula. And I think we're all thinking that and focusing on that. So to me, that is the big picture.
Okay, so that was Gwen Jones talking about, the next steps and moving forward with this. Yeah, there's just a lot going on for sure, and the emergency ordinance is for 90 days and will cover from like I said, the 11 p.m. to about 5 a.m. window where police can use this tool to remove folks from overnight camping. By September, the city will look into review this new rule for future meetings. Not to mention that by then they're going to work on the budget and just determine whether or not they can allocate funds from local taxes to see if they can actually build this budget through this. So another big key in this would be the budget committee and their focus on finding funds to support these temporary shelters and where they can get it from. So the Missoula's priority is to keep people alive, and the winter shelter was created for that purpose. And with this upcoming budget, POV extension areas will be considered to find places for folks, rather than just being like, you can't stay here. Sorry, basically has been most of the kind of like the thing, even though, you prompt people to be like, hey, just so you know, this is a temporary winter shelter. By the end, we're going to try the best to try to get into more permanent housing during this time. And then, things come up and then a lot of barriers. And there's just a lot of waiting too. Like, it's hard to find a place to live when you have the longer you're homeless, the harder it is to find a place. It just goes into the idea that it was like, oh, you haven't had a place, or you haven't had a consistency in your work, your life. How can we expect you to pay the rent, blah, blah, blah. And then so it becomes by the numbers algorithm where people are just like, they look at a piece of paper and be like, oh, no, this person's terrible, regardless of the real human impact that would be to giving some people shelter as well. So it's very interesting as well. And, not everyone has the same experience, and there's just there's solutions out there, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of monetary backing for a lot of those solutions moving forward. So let's talk about the last Constitution, which is basically a 50-year celebration of Montana's state constitution, which is a pretty big deal because the state of Montana was basically underneath the copper thumb of the mining industries and interests for pretty much its incarnation from the 1800s well into the 1970s, when we actually had well-educated people and lawyers and to come together and build a constitution that the state of Montana can be proud of. So much so, they created a whole series with Evan Barrett hosting, and this guest is Karen Beck-Kaplis, who is a research analyst and executive article for the creation of the Montana State Constitution. And so they talked about how governor governs when they are out of state for one reason or another. So this is this.
It carried the day.
Well, there's some history about that. With Betty Babcock, her husband was the governor,
right?
And he was having differences with James, who was the lieutenant governor, who was a Republican, but when Babcock went out of state, they'd been having a discussion about who ought to be on the Public Service Commission. And so Tim Babcock, the governor, left the state, and when he was gone, Ted James appointed Ernie Steele to the Public Service Commission. And so I'm sure that Betty was thinking of that when she says, I think we have these guys ought to run together.
Right.
And the same thing had happened when back at the time of W.A. Clark, there was a big fuss over that too. So you unified the governor and lieutenant governor.
Right. And that this business about being out of the state, I think the Constitution now says that the governor, just because he leaves the state, doesn't mean that the lieutenant governor takes over. It's after, I think, 25 days.
If he's going to leave a large number of days or something, there might be a transition.
Right.
Or he can assign and say, I'm going to be gone. I'm going to let the lieutenant governor have my authority for a while.
Right.
But it doesn't, not like the old days when, they left the boundary of the state and the lieutenant governor had all the power.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you fixed that.
Right. Right.
And then, so therefore, starting in 1976 was the first time a governor and lieutenant governor ran together. Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Well, see the big difference.
Right. And some of the other things that actually almost all of the discussion, at least in committee of the whole on the floor, dealt with the difference between the majority report and the minority report, and didn't really. I mean, the majority report and the minority report on most of the rest of the things were identical, and the joint ticket was one. The executive budget was made mandatory in the new Constitution. It had been statutory before, but it now is a requirement.
They wanted to make sure that the executive branch produced a budget.
Exactly.
For the legislature to consider.
Right.
All right, so that was a little taste of the last best Constitution. It is available on MCAT's YouTube channel, MCAT TV Missoula, and you can find out all other sorts of programs as well. Did you know that did you know that Missoula had a Chinatown? You can learn more about that. The public library put on a presentation. One of the employees here, Maria, put on a presentation about Chinatown in the city of Missoula. So that program is free and available on our YouTube channel. MCAT TV Missoula is the best way to look for it as well, because if you look up MCAT, it's, you're obviously going to look up, doctor stuff. So anyways, that's some of the things that are happening there. So let's talk about some of the things that are happening within the city of Missoula if you're going out and about. It is the Zootown Open Disc Golf Tournament this weekend. It's already happening right now. You're already missing out on this event that takes place that takes the game of golf and replaces it with equipment that is like a frisbee or a golf disc, for you nerds out there. The Garden City Flyers Disc Golf Club is excited to welcome the best disc golfers in the world to Missoula. They're going to be up on Blue Mountain for the next 3 days from June 9th through the 11th. This event is the silver event on the Disc Golf Pro Tour, DGPT. There will be over 8,000 disc golf tournaments sanctioned by the Professional Disc Golf Association worldwide in 2023, but only the 25 biggest and best events are a part of the DGPT. So enjoy that. So that's happening all week long. Blue Mountain, which is just on the southern side of the city of Missoula. You can look up more information online. So Excel Level 2 Lifelong Learning Center. This is one of the ongoing educational platforms for people who want to learn many different various trade skills and different kinds of things, very specific, geared based for a lot of adult education. And so one of their lessons is Excel. You can learn to organize, account work, a lot of different things with that. Proficient in Excel is a common thing that you can put on your resume as well. Makerspace Walk-in Hours, Library Level 1. Every Friday at 9:30, you can make your 3D print, laser scans, and it is open hours and open walk-in. Family fun time, so there's a lot of indoor fun stuff for you guys. As it's raining, kind of thundering and storming out there, even yesterday, it was the light rain, wasn't so bad, but if you want to have your kid be active and your family be active, indoor activities at MISMO, YMCA, and Roots Acro Sports Center are many of the featured indoor sports kind of arenas in the city of Missoula that have had a staple of indoor fun. And if you don't want to basically work out your body, but you want to work out your brain, Tiny Tales and Story Time are for young children just before kindergarten on the second floor of the library every Friday at 10:30 a.m. And then they have a story time on Saturdays at 10:30 a.m. as well. Lunch at the Missoula Senior Center. This is a recurring event at the Missoula Senior Center starting at 11:30 a.m. Yarns and Watercolor on the 4th floor of the Missoula Public Library at noon. So you want to do some yarn, do some stitching, make your own hats, scarves, and stuff like that. 4th floor Blackfoot Room. And the Cooper Room, they hosted by Rob P., who is also the building maintenance guy, also does a lot of painting classes up there with watercolor. And then we have the 3-day annual Mullen Road Conference starting this afternoon at 1 p.m. Hunting John Bull in the Northern Rockies. It's the U.S./Canadian tensions and the Mullen Road from 1804 to 1925, which starts at 6:30 p.m. So this is a presentation on what the road was all about, because this was the major throughway and road for a lot of people who used for trades, trails, and stuff like that. Saturday, they're going to have an all-day conference from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. speaking about transportation, transformation, and resistance along the Mullen Road. And then Sunday, they're doing a bus tour along existing and disappearing portions of the Mullen Road, both east and west of Missoula. So there's a lot of stuff going on with that. Lego Club is happening this afternoon on the second floor at 2:30 p.m. Special event, Speakeasy Symphony at the Doubletree Edgewater. Tickets include dinner, dancing, and unique and limited live auction. This is at the Doubletree Hotel, 5:30 p.m. tonight. Also happening at the University of Montana, they're doing a tribute to our largest planet. The Payne Family Native American Center will host the Public Planetarium show this Friday. Show times 5:30 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. This week's shows will focus on the wonders of Jupiter, the largest planet in our solar system. D&D for adults online through the Missoula Public Library, starting at 6 p.m. Prof at Wilma, they can play some music at the Wilma Theater starting at 7 p.m. Paddleheads game is going to do a Star Wars night fireworks. So it seems like every Friday they're going to be launching some fireworks out there. So if you live near the baseball field, which is just on the other side of the river, just down the way, not so far from the Missoula Public Library. But if you're downtown and you're hearing a lot of loud noises, Friday night it's going to be pretty loud on Friday night as well, as they are taking on their team from Great Falls this weekend as well. So this is at 7 p.m. tonight. Jack, J-A-C-K, at the ZAC. Zootown Arts Community Center will host a night of comedy live with Jack podcast, hosted by Corey Demers and featuring some of Missoula's best and most wanted comedians. Summer Squares, Western Cider, some old-time community square dancing. All dances are taught by a caller, beginners, and so basically you swing your dancer round and round. You're going to have a person actually calling it, and they're doing Summer Squares at 7 p.m. tonight at Western Cider. Louis Bandeau at Old Post. I'm going to be playing some acoustic music. Dark Horse Uncommon Evolution is going to be at 8 p.m. at Dark Horse Bar, which is going to be some rock music. And that's going to wrap up your Friday night as we go into your Saturday markets from 8 a.m. to about 2 p.m. The markets are going to be all happening on many different places in the downtown Missoula area, from Karis Park all the way to the Red X's at the end where the train station is. So that's what's happening there. And so Go Grizz Day. So the University of Montana, graduation has already happened. Go Grizz Day is our single-day event dedicated to celebrating UM and admitted students. All admitted students and their families are invited to attend, learn more about what it means to be a student here at University of Montana, connect with UM leaders, partnership, and the community, participate in Grizz Fest, our celebration on the Oval. College is the time for you. We'll always remember, and Go Grizz is a great way to kick it off. Reduction Cooled Soda Fire Workshop at 10 a.m. Clay Studio of Missoula. The workshop is a great opportunity for intermediate and advanced levels to learn about the process and possibilities of reducing cooling a soda kiln. So this is starting at 10 a.m. at the Clay Studio of Missoula. Knit in Public Day. Missoula Public Library is hosting. You can join yarns for the program. It's going to be at the library lawn from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. They will have chairs set up and you can bring your own, learn about the ongoing charity projects in which they are participating, and that's going to happen on the Knit in Public Day, Saturday at 10 a.m. here at the Public Library. Family Fun Time, Clay Projects, Wildfire Ceramic Studios is doing a Family Fun Day at 10 a.m. on Saturday. Moon Randolph Homestead is also doing an open visitation at the Moon Randolph Homestead. Learn about homesteading from way back when you can just basically find a plot of land and build a house. That's all you can do. 10 a.m. at Moon Randolph Homestead. We got a Montana Grizz soccer camps. This is College ID Camp 2, starting at 1 p.m., and this is 1 to 8 p.m. on day 1, 8 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., and this is going to be at the South Campus Stadium. MCAT Saturday drop-ins are going to continue throughout the month of June from 1 to 3 p.m. Kids get to drop in and do some stop animation and make some movies and such. Glacier Ice Rink's Missoula Palooza, Glacier Ice Rink, is free event held from 5 to 9 p.m. on the outdoor rink space. This evening features live music from Milltown Dam and Mudslide Charlie, as well as activities such as the dunk tank and cornhole. Food trucks will be on the site and beer will be available for purchase. The Benevolence at Imagination Brewing Company is going to play some rock music at Imagination Brewing Company Saturday night at 6 p.m. Also, Draftworks is doing a Love is a Dog from Nebraska. It's going to be a jam band at the Draftworks. 6:30 p.m. Kettles Amphitheater is hosting Death Cab for Cutie. Nice band. Augmented Evening in Missoula. Venue address is emailed to the ticket holder. So this is a very exclusive kind of augmented evening in Missoula, so you get to enjoy a band, and you have to you have to buy a ticket, and then they'll send you an address where you guys can go. That's not shady. Summer Learning Program, All Ages Music Fest. MCAT is going to live stream this event for the summer rock hard, and so do libraries. Inside the library, first floor for All Ages Music Fest with local metal bands, Walking Corpse Syndrome, Damn the Bad Luck, and Elephant Graveyard. The show for free, but donations are gratefully appreciated. You can go to freeverseproject.org for more information. And the Paddleheads is going against Great Falls Saturday night at 7 p.m. Here in Queer Variety Show fundraiser for the Western Montana LGBTQ Plus Center. It's going to be at the ZAC starting at 7 p.m. on Saturday night. Jewel and Pianos at Save and Hoop, like always, at 8 p.m. Grease Cult Wizard is going to be at Monk's at 8 p.m. Solid State Karaoke, West Side Lanes Fun Center, 9 p.m. And then DJ Chris Moon Club Music at the Badlander. That's a Saturday wrap-up for you guys as well. If you're interested in doing anything on Sundays, Cohesion Art Collective presents Cohesion Among Chaos. Student Arts Community Center is doing a first panel discussion of the 3-part summer series featuring BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and People of Color artists from the Cohesive Art Collective. And this is going to be at 1:30 p.m. on Sunday. Paddleheads game, it's a free Sunday. Oregon Parks Fields, all kiddos 12 and younger get in free to all Sunday games, and it's going to be at the baseball field at 2 p.m. So baseball is in full swing here in the city of Missoula, and you can find out more by going on to MissoulaEvents.net. There's a lot of things happening. There's always a lot of ongoing things as well. And for Wake Up Missoula, I'm Scott Ramp. Here is another video courtesy of Josh Cook.